Hello dear friends, Kalidas here to offer some thoughts today about the United States and its great transition that it is in currently. If you are in the United States, you are part of this karma. If you are in another part of the world, you will see the United States go through a big, unforgettable transformation. And this began some time ago. They've been in this Rahu Mahadasha for a good long while. 18 years is how long Rahu Mahadasha lasts. This is the first influence that we'll talk about. It will last until 2031. So you can do the math if you like on when that began for us. But the most important part of this Rahu Mahadasha is the time that coincides. It's a double layer of pressure on the United States, and that has begun in the year 2020. And in 2023, that pressure became climactic. This is the United States birth moon, and it's called Sadi Sati, when the planet Saturn moves over one's own birth moon. So a couple of very strong influences that indicate transformation from the very root level of a person's existence. In this case, it's a country's existence. So we have the Sadi Sati, which lasts 7.5 years. We're in the middle of that, and this will last all the way until about May of 2027. And then we have the Rahu Mahadasha. And the Rahu in the United States chart is in the 8th house of death, and it is conjunct Mercury, the communicator. And the 8th house is karmic debt. It's something that you must go through due to actions you've taken in the past of selfish, egoistic interest. And we always have to pay those back anytime we take from this universe. Now, the news on TV, it will have you convinced that the world is in turmoil at this time. But this is always true. It just so happens that the United States, kind of a front runner and a leader of the free world, if you will, they're going through a period that's many layers of deep transformation and revelation. It will reveal what has actually been pulling the strings. And this will be shocking to many. But if the news has you convinced that this world is hopeless or in turmoil or something's not right about God's creation, the masters tell us that everything is always balanced, and that one evil will balance a good, virtuous element of creation, and that here in this physical realm it will always be 50-50, good and evil, ignorance and knowledge, wisdom and stupidity. And that will equally compete on this stage. So turn off the news. It's going to tell you lies. It's going to make you think that darkness is winning. And even when oftentimes they even make up a hero for you, one that's not even really doing good. And they harp on this imagined hero. And really it's just another sellout that they're giving millions of dollars to lie to you. So turn off the news. It's going to tell you the world's in turmoil. But what's important to know is that this world is always 50-50. Evil and good are able to compete equally here. And the biggest piece of the transformative puzzle, which is the United States big change, which we're just seeing the very, very ugly and insecure beginnings of, is ultimately a very promising one. And this is that we are in Dwapara Yuga, the rising age of energy, in which man's awareness of the finer forces of energy, consciousness, and matter all come together as one understanding. And this would be the vast awakening of pranayama techniques and across the planet, and the huge interest in yoga in the United States. And so whatever the United States goes through, which is Sadi Sati, a very ugly time, it can be, if we resist, if we blame other people, then this can be a very ugly time. Combine that with a Rahu Mahadasha, which is 18 years long, that we're right in the middle of, and a poorly placed Rahu in the United States chart, then you have a forward movement but it will be very unstable. There will be lots of trips and exposures of its instability, but it will ultimately promise growth. Rahu is a fantastic time for people. It forces them to realize where they're still unstable. It's embarrassing and it's revelatory in the sense that if you can be humble, you'll be aware of all the things that it's showing you that you still are not that great at, and you need to pray for God to help you do them better, to help you serve better, to help you love better, to help you give more. Whatever it is you feel unstable at doing, Rahu will bring that up. And here in the United States, it's facing karmic debts, Rahu in the 8th house, and it says we're terrible at that. We're terrible at owning our karma. We're always blaming someone else, trying to get up all in their business, tell them why they're wrong. And this is the kind of person that Sati Sati and Rahu Mahadasha will completely obliterate. It will destroy that person's confidence, and if they keep outwardly projecting the negativity and not realizing that they need to change, it will continue to get worse. And this is what we see in the country. But ultimately, it's Dwapara Yuga. We are rising, and a big negative part of the chart, which would indicate tests, challenge, insanity, loss of control of one's own life. The United States is in that. But since we're in the since we're in the Dwapara Yuga rising, which the masters tell us this is the yugas that we're in, we're rising into Dwapara, we can guarantee that this period of time in which instability is prevalent will ultimately lead to a greater society. And this is how it's done. It takes time, it takes patience, and you who must live through this, try to be present today with faith in God's plan, which is many, many, many days into the future. And it's not going to get better today, but try to feel the longer rhythm of it, the longer rhythm of Dwapara Yuga. And that this little 18 years of Rahu and the 7.5 years of Sati Sati, and during the period of 2025, there's another really hot, possibly a very difficult time for humanity. And this is the date March 20th, 2005 until June 9th of that same year, 2025. This is when Saturn and Rahu cross paths in the 4th house of the United States chart, which is our house of home, like where we live. It could affect our home soil. There could be an invasion during this time, or some kind of war on American soil. The 4th house is our home. And Saturn and Rahu never speak of easy times ahead. Rahu is unstable. Saturn is attached to stability, to control. So you mix those two things and you have chaos. And look at our world. It's nearing that edge. But keep in mind, Dwapara Yuga is a greater, longer rhythm, and that these negativities, these suicidal wars, as Yogananda describes them, these are temporary and they play an important role in the transitions of these countries. Do we understand what those roles will be? We don't need to. We need to today be present, to be channels of love, of wisdom, and humility, to understand life is about learning. Just because I've been on a spiritual path 20, 30, 40 years, that doesn't mean that we're done learning. This world will continue to produce difficult, humiliating lessons for anyone who's still holding on to their egoic separation from God. And it's only when the challenge gets hard enough that we let go of our hopes and dreams about life and we start to cling to the eternal. And that is the big change that America will once again go through, because in their past, America has been a deeply spiritual country, and that in the 1900s, a massive veil has been pulled over the eyes of American spirituality by the force of religion, separatism, and the human ego and its need to be right. So what we'll approach now as an end of culture, an end of hope, an end of possibility for personal ego to succeed any longer in the eyes of the public. And this will cause the American value system to rise once again to the eternal. The temporary opinion of man, the temporary status of man in this world means nothing, and it will all be proven so in due time. But perhaps this time of Saturn and Rahu together in the zodiac in 2025 will be a wake-up call that humans need to attune to the eternal, that for temporary values we must live no longer. It creates too much attachment, strife, differences, negative clashes of different kinds of attachments. And if we all learned that this realm is God's and that we're here to live for Him and for the growth that we experience, the joy of growth towards that infinite blissful presence, then we'll be in a unified state as humanity. But likely we need to see some severe trials. So Yogananda did predict the world war would eventually arrive, and here we are at the threshold. And we see that in the United States chart, things do not look good. And when things don't look good for a person, when I read their chart and things do not look good, this is usually what it looks like. This USA chart, it's usually what a person's chart looks like when they're coming for a reading, because they don't understand the amount of future stress that's bearing down on them. They can't handle it today. They want to know, really, is this on paper? Is this scheduled? Does this have an end? These things are important to know. Astrology can help us so much to face our difficult karma and recognize this is temporary, but my values, which I live for and I grow for, those are eternal. Those aren't going anywhere. This world, ephemeral. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, those who cling only to God, they need never return to this grief-stricken ephemeral world, which is bound to go through these chaotic cycles, earthquakes, cataclysmic wars, and things like this. And we're right in the beginning of a major, major shift. So hold on to your spiritual life, the only thing that's real. The opinion of man and the goals of man and what they view as success in this material plane, it's all lies. We're here to live for God, and humanity will once again know this as we rise into the age of energy, through which we become aware that when we withdraw the energy and raise the energy to the higher centers in the brain, we can become a whole new human being. We can become a better expression of what we've always wanted to be. So it's a very good thing that these trials are invading our peace at this time, the peace of a world not fully self-realized. So there needs to be wake-up calls, else we become too comfortable in materialistic values. And this is right in the USA chart, that there's a need to transition. Really, it's a need to die to those materialistic hopes and dreams, and to be reborn into the real meaning of the United States culture, unity, oneness. And this is spirituality at its deepest meaning. So I hope this talk about the United States today has been encouraging, though we must travel through this very difficult period, of which I think the worst will be March 20th, 2025 until June 9th of 2025. And this is due to a triple complex that's happening, 3 different very difficult influences. And what we would say for a person is this is the time where you must really trust the Divine Mother to take charge of your life and show you that there's nothing to fear, that your security lies in eternity, and that everything else on this stage is merely here to teach you about that which never ends. So God bless you, and thank God for the spiritual life, because it does give us real lasting security in a world that certainly does not produce that, even for those who are the most successful in the eyes of man. So God bless us, and let us be steadfast in our wish to dwell today in spiritual grace by loving and being an instrument of love in the very situations that are presented to us now. Om Jai Ma, Jai Guru.